My dear soul, before we begin this sacred journey together, I ask for your permission. Permission to speak truths that have been whispered through the veil of time, truths that many fear to acknowledge, yet truths that your spirit has been quietly seeking. For what I am about to share with you carries the weight of decades. Decades spent witnessing the luminous threads that connect us to realms beyond the physical. Decades of observing the sacred patterns that reveal the true elevation of the human soul. I have spent my life walking between worlds, my vision extending far beyond what the ordinary eye can perceive. Through countless encounters with souls from every corner of existence, I have learned to recognize the unmistakable signs, the spiritual signatures that emanate from those who have begun their true awakening. And if you have found yourself here, in this moment, drawn to these words like a moth to candlelight, then perhaps you too have felt that persistent whisper within your heart, that gentle yet insistent voice asking, "Where do I truly stand in my spiritual journey?" Perhaps you have gazed at yourself in quiet moments of solitude, wondering whether the spiritual practices you follow, the books you read, the meditations you attempt, actually mean anything at all. Perhaps you have questioned whether your soul has grown, whether you have progressed beyond the illusions that once held you captive, or whether you remain trapped in the same spiritual stagnation that seems to envelop so many in this modern world. If this resonates within the chambers of your heart, then know that you are not here by accident. The universe has a way of delivering exactly what we need, precisely when we need it most. And today, through these words, through this sacred transmission, you are about to discover something that will fundamentally reorganize how you perceive your spiritual development. In the next few minutes, you will understand the 12 sacred signs that serve as infallible markers of true spiritual elevation. Signs that have been recognized by mystics and visionaries throughout the ages, yet rarely spoken of so directly. But let me share something with you that might surprise you. Something that could serve as either your greatest blessing or your deepest wound, depending on how your soul receives this knowledge. These signs I am about to reveal are not what most people expect them to be. They are not the obvious displays of spiritual prowess that the ego loves to parade. They are not about how many hours you meditate, how many sacred texts you have memorized, or how perfectly you can perform spiritual rituals. No, my dear friend, true spiritual elevation reveals itself in ways far more subtle, far more profound. It whispers through the fabric of your daily existence like morning mist through an ancient forest. It shows itself in how you respond when no one is watching, in the quality of silence that surrounds your being, in the depth of compassion that flows through you even when you feel empty yourself. Imagine, if you will, standing at the edge of a crystal-clear mountain lake at dawn. The surface appears perfectly still, reflecting the sky above with such precision that you cannot tell where reality ends and reflection begins. But then, as you watch with deeper attention, you begin to notice the subtle currents moving beneath the surface, the gentle spirals of life that reveal the lake's true nature. This is how spiritual elevation works. It is not the dramatic splash that draws attention, but the sacred currents flowing beneath the surface of ordinary life. And here lies something crucial that I must tell you before we go any deeper. This knowledge, these 12 sacred signs. They are not commonly shared. They come from a lineage of understanding that has been carefully preserved through generations of those who have walked the path of genuine awakening. Most spiritual teachers speak of love and light, of positive thinking and manifestation, but they rarely address the profound markers that indicate true spiritual maturity. That is why I need you to do something right now. If you feel the resonance of truth in these words, if something within your soul recognizes the authenticity of what we are exploring together, please subscribe to this channel, not for vanity, not for numbers, but because this type of wisdom is increasingly rare in a world drowning in spiritual superficiality. Here, we speak of what others fear to acknowledge. Here, we explore the depths that others prefer to avoid. But there is something else I sense as I speak to you across time and space, a pattern that emerges whenever souls are ready to receive deeper truth. You may have noticed synchronicities lately, moments when the universe seemed to be speaking directly to you through symbols, through repeated numbers, through encounters that felt far from coincidental. You may have experienced dreams that felt more real than waking life, or sudden moments of knowing that seemed to arrive from nowhere. These are not random occurrences, my dear soul. They are the universe's way of preparing you for elevation, for a new level of understanding about your own spiritual development. And the fact that you are here now, reading these words, suggests that you are ready to see yourself reflected in these 12 sacred mirrors, ready to understand where you truly stand on the great spiral of awakening. Consider this. Throughout my years of vision, I have observed that those souls approaching significant spiritual elevation often experience a period of profound questioning. They begin to wonder whether they have been deceiving themselves, whether their spiritual practices are genuine or merely elaborate forms of self-comfort. This questioning, this spiritual discomfort, is not a sign of regression. It is actually one of the first indicators that the soul is preparing to shed an old skin, to step into a more authentic expression of its divine nature. And so, as we embark on this exploration together, I want you to approach it not as a test you might pass or fail, but as a sacred recognition, a moment when the veil between your conscious understanding and your soul's true nature becomes transparent. Some of these signs will resonate so deeply that you might feel tears of recognition. Others might challenge you, might reveal areas where growth still beckons. This is the sacred dance of authentic spiritual development. It is not about perfection. It is about authentic alignment with the deeper currents of existence. It is about recognizing the profound beauty and responsibility that comes with genuine spiritual maturity. But here is what I need you to understand before we reveal these 12 sacred signs. What you discover about yourself through this exploration is not meant to remain private knowledge. When we receive spiritual understanding, we become temporary guardians of that wisdom. We are called to share it, not from ego or self-importance, but from the natural overflow of spiritual abundance. So as you watch, as you recognize yourself in these ancient patterns, I invite you to prepare your heart for service. Think of someone in your life who might be struggling with their own spiritual questions. someone who might benefit from understanding these deeper truths about spiritual development.
This knowledge is meant to flow like water, finding its way to every soul that thirsts for authentic understanding. And when we reach the end of this sacred transmission, I will ask you to share not just this video, but your own experience of recognition. In the comments below, tell us which sign resonated most deeply with your soul's journey. Tell us about the moment when you first sensed your own spiritual awakening beginning. These shared experiences create a tapestry of wisdom that serves souls we may never meet. The time has come to lift the veil, to reveal what has been hidden in plain sight throughout your entire spiritual journey. The 12 signs await, and your soul, your beautiful seeking soul, is finally ready to see itself reflected in the eternal mirrors of spiritual truth. Are you prepared to discover not just where you stand, but where you are being called to grow? Are you ready to recognize the sacred patterns that have been weaving themselves through your life? Patterns that reveal the magnificent spiritual being you are becoming? Then, let us begin this sacred unveiling together. In all my years walking between the worlds of seen and unseen, I have witnessed something profound that most never speak of openly. There exists what I call the mirror of souls, an invisible reflection that occurs when spiritual beings encounter one another. Like recognizes like, not through words or performances, but through an emanation that cannot be faked, cannot be manufactured, and certainly cannot be learned from books. You see, each soul carries what I can only describe as a frequency signature, much like a fingerprint of the spirit.
Those who have walked far along the spiritual path emit a particular resonance that others of similar depth immediately recognize. It's not mystical theater. It's as natural as water finding its level. Have you ever met someone and felt an immediate sense of knowing? Not attraction, not familiarity, but a deeper recognition that seemed to bypass your mind entirely? This is your soul responding to its reflection in another mirror of consciousness. The spiritually mature understand this phenomenon intimately, while those still caught in ego's web often miss these sacred encounters entirely. But here lies one of the great tests of spiritual development. Can you distinguish between authentic spiritual presence and what I call ego's elaborate masquerade? Because in our world today, spiritual performance has become an art form.
People wear their practices like costumes, speak in borrowed wisdom, and create elaborate displays of their supposed enlightenment. The authentic spiritual being needs no stage. They carry their light quietly, like a candle that illuminates simply by being lit. There's no effort in their presence, no performance, no need to convince or impress. Their spiritual fragrance is unmistakable to those who have developed the inner senses to perceive it. I remember encountering individuals throughout my life who possessed this quality. They would enter a room, and the very atmosphere would shift, not because they announced their arrival with spiritual rhetoric, but because their inner state had become so refined that it naturally affected their environment. Children would be drawn to them. Animals would sense their peace. Even skeptics would find themselves mysteriously calmed in their presence. This is what I mean by the mirror of souls. True spiritual development creates an emanation that acts like a tuning fork, causing others of similar frequency to resonate. It's not something you can pretend or manufacture through techniques. It's the natural result of inner purification and genuine communion with the sacred. The ancient traditions understood this phenomenon well. They spoke of the various levels of spiritual perception, what some called the inner senses, or the eyes of the heart. As these faculties develop, one begins to perceive the spiritual reality that underlies all surface appearances. You start to see not just what people say or do, but who they truly are in their essential nature. This ability to recognize authentic spiritual presence becomes one of the clearest indicators of your own development. The spiritually immature are easily impressed by external displays, eloquent speakers, dramatic practices, claims of special powers. But those who have walked the path recognize that true spiritual authority comes from an entirely different place. It emanates from what I call the deepened heart, that place within you that has been softened by genuine suffering, refined by sincere practice, and opened through authentic surrender. This heart space becomes like a sacred chamber that naturally reflects the divine presence. When two such hearts encounter each other, there's an immediate recognition, a sense of coming home to something you didn't even realize you had been missing. But here's what many don't understand. This recognition doesn't always feel comfortable. Sometimes, meeting your spiritual reflection can be deeply challenging because it shows you not only who you are, but who you could become. It reveals gaps in your own development that perhaps you had been avoiding. The mirror of souls doesn't flatter, it reveals truth. I've observed that those in the middle stages of spiritual development often experience what I call recognition anxiety. They sense there are deeper levels available. They catch glimpses of more authentic beings, but instead of feeling inspired, they feel exposed. Their ego begins to work overtime, either trying to impress or trying to diminish what they're perceiving. The truly mature soul, however, feels only gratitude for such encounters. They understand that each meeting with authentic spiritual presence is a gift, an opportunity to be reminded of their own deepest nature. They don't compete or compare. They simply allow the recognition to deepen their own commitment to the path. This brings us to one of the most subtle signs of spiritual maturity. How do you respond when you encounter someone who clearly embodies qualities you aspire to develop? Do you feel inspired or threatened? Do you seek to learn or to find flaws? Your honest answer reveals much about your current spiritual condition. The ego always wants to protect its constructed identity. When it encounters genuine spiritual presence, it has several defensive strategies. It might dismiss the person as not really that evolved. Or it might go to the opposite extreme and create an unhealthy idealization. Either response prevents authentic recognition from occurring. The spiritually developed soul, however, can meet such presence with what the ancients called naked awareness, seeing without the filters of comparison, judgment, or projection. This clarity of perception is itself a profound spiritual accomplishment, one that most never achieve because it requires setting aside the ego's constant need to position itself in relationship to others. But perhaps the most profound aspect of the mirror of souls is how it reflects back your own unused potential. When you encounter someone operating from their authentic spiritual center, something within you remembers. It's like seeing a familiar landscape from your true home.
part of you says, yes, I remember this. This is who I really am beneath all my accumulated conditioning. This recognition can be both beautiful and devastating. Beautiful because it confirms your deepest intuition about your own spiritual nature. Devastating because it shows you how far you may have drifted from your authentic self, how much energy you've been spending maintaining false identities and pursuing meaningless goals. The question becomes, what do you do with this recognition when it occurs? Do you dismiss it to protect your comfort zone? Do you try to capture it and turn it into another spiritual achievement? Or do you allow it to work on you silently, the way water works on stone, gradually reshaping your inner landscape? Those who have learned to work skillfully with the mirror of souls understand that each authentic spiritual encounter is actually a form of transmission, not in any dramatic sense, but in the quiet way that one tuned instrument can cause another to vibrate in harmony.
By simply being in the presence of authentic spiritual development, something within you is reminded of its own potential for that same development. This is why the truly wise have always emphasized the importance of spiritual community, not for socializing or networking, but for this profound process of mutual recognition and reflection. When souls gather who are genuinely committed to their development, each becomes a mirror for the others, reflecting back both their current achievements and their unlived possibilities. As we continue deeper into these sacred territories of recognition, I want you to consider this question. And please share your honest experience in the comments below. Can you recall a moment when you encountered someone whose spiritual presence immediately revealed something profound about your own spiritual nature? What did that mirror show you about where you truly stand on this pathless path we call awakening?
Because understanding the mirror of souls is not merely theoretical knowledge. It's a practical key to accelerating your own spiritual development through conscious recognition of the sacred reflections that surround you every day. Now, as we've established how souls mirror each other in their spiritual development, we arrive at the foundation stones themselves, those first unmistakable markers that signal a consciousness beginning to awaken from its ancient slumber. Through decades of witnessing human transformation, I have observed that certain signs appear consistently, like faithful sentries marking the entrance to deeper spiritual territories.
What I'm about to share with you represents more than mere observation. These are the sacred doorways through which every genuinely awakening soul must pass. And if you recognize these patterns within yourself, understand that you are not experiencing random coincidences. You are responding to an ancient calling that has been whispering to humanity since the beginning of time. The first foundation marker I call the sacred pause, that profound ability to find stillness amidst the relentless chaos and noise that surrounds our modern existence. This is not merely the capacity to meditate in a quiet room, though that has its place. No, the sacred pause reveals itself when you discover that space of profound stillness
even while standing in the middle of a screaming storm. I remember seeing this quality in a woman who came to me years ago, exhausted by the demands of caring for 3 young children while working full-time. She described moments when, even as chaos erupted around her, children crying, phones ringing, deadlines pressing, she would suddenly find herself dropping into a space of complete inner silence. In those moments, she said, it was as if time itself paused, and she could act from a place of profound calm rather than reactive desperation. This is the sacred pause manifesting. It's your consciousness learning to touch that eternal stillness that exists at the core of all experience. When you begin to access this space regularly, you're no longer at the mercy of external circumstances. You've discovered the secret doorway that mystics throughout history have spoken of, the eye of the storm that remains perfectly still while everything else spins wildly around it. If you've experienced this sacred pause, even briefly, pay attention to this recognition stirring within you now, because this capacity marks you as someone whose spiritual sensitivity is awakening beyond the ordinary level of human consciousness. You're beginning to touch something timeless within yourself. The second foundation marker flows naturally from the first, what I call the compassionate eye. This is the profound ability to witness suffering without immediately falling into judgment, and more remarkably, to genuinely feel others' pain as your own without losing your center. This sign distinguishes true spiritual sensitivity from mere emotional reactivity. Many people believe they are compassionate because they feel upset when witnessing pain. But the compassionate eye operates differently. It sees suffering with complete clarity, feels it deeply, yet maintains enough spaciousness to respond rather than react. It's the difference between drowning alongside someone versus throwing them a lifeline while keeping your feet firmly planted on solid ground. I've witnessed this quality in healthcare workers who can hold space for tremendous pain without becoming overwhelmed by it. They feel everything, yet something within them remains unshakable. Not because they've hardened their hearts, but because they've learned to love from a place deeper than personal emotion. They've discovered that true compassion requires both an open heart and an unshakable foundation. When the compassionate eye awakens in you, you begin to see that everyone is struggling with something invisible to the casual observer. The angry person in line ahead of you is carrying wounds you cannot see. The difficult family member is responding from their own unhealed places. The compassionate eye doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it sees the suffering beneath it without losing itself in judgment or reactive emotions. Have you noticed this quality developing within yourself? That growing ability to see pain clearly without immediately needing to fix it, flee from it, or judge it? This is your spiritual sensitivity, expanding beyond personal boundaries into something more universal. The third foundation marker I call the inner compass. That growing capacity to trust your inner knowing over external validation and the relentless programming of societal expectations. This sign often appears as an increasing discomfort with decisions made solely to please others or conform to what you should do according to external authorities. The inner compass manifests as a quiet but persistent voice that seems to know truths your rational mind hasn't yet figured out. It's the part of you that recognizes authentic people instantly, that feels uneasy in situations that look perfectly safe on the surface, that guides you toward opportunities that may not make logical sense, but feel deeply right. I remember a young man who described this perfectly. He had been following a prestigious career path chosen by his family, earning good money and social approval. Yet something within him felt increasingly hollow. His inner compass kept pointing toward work with disadvantaged children, something his family dismissed as financially impractical. When he finally trusted that inner guidance over external expectations, his entire life transformed, not just professionally, but at the level of his soul's alignment with its true purpose. This inner compass isn't about rejecting all external input or becoming rebellious for its own sake. Rather, it's about developing the discernment to distinguish between genuine wisdom from others and the conditioning that keeps souls trapped in patterns that don't serve their authentic development. When your inner compass begins to activate, you'll notice that following its guidance consistently leads you toward greater aliveness, even when the path seems challenging or unconventional. You're learning to trust the deepest intelligence within you, the part that knows your soul's true direction, even when your mind cannot yet comprehend the larger pattern unfolding. These 3 foundation markers, the sacred pause, the compassionate eye, and the inner compass, work together as an integrated system. The sacred pause gives you the spaciousness to access the compassionate eye, which in turn allows you to hear the whispers of your inner compass more clearly. They strengthen and support each other in an ascending spiral of spiritual development. But here's what I want you to understand about these foundation markers. They are not achievements to be attained once and then forgotten. They are living capacities that deepen and mature throughout your spiritual journey. Someone who has developed basic access to these qualities is just beginning to explore their potential depth. If you recognize one or more of these markers within yourself, I want you to know that you are walking a path that relatively few humans consciously choose to explore. You are responding to an invitation that has been extended to your soul from the beginning of time. This is not a coincidence. This is your spiritual DNA beginning to activate according to its original design. And please, take a moment now to reflect on this question and share your experience in the comments below. Which of these 3 foundation markers feels most active in your life right now? The sacred pause, the compassionate eye, or the inner compass? How does it manifest in your daily experience, and what challenges does it present? Your recognition and naming of these qualities is itself a form of sacred practice that helps deepen their presence in your life. But these are merely the foundation stones we've explored today. The next signs we'll examine reveal something far more profound. Markers that indicate your consciousness is beginning to access territories that most humans never even suspect exist. These deeper signs reveal capacities that border on what some might call miraculous, yet they emerge as naturally as flowers blooming when the spiritual soil has been properly prepared. Now we move into signs that reveal a more sophisticated spiritual architecture within you. Signs that indicate your spirit has learned to dance with power in ways that most souls never discover. These are the signs of the awakened spirit in movement, expressing itself through refined patterns of being that transform every relationship and interaction. The 4th sign I wish to share with you is what I call the gentle power. Perhaps you've noticed this emerging in yourself, a peculiar kind of strength that doesn't need to raise its voice, doesn't need to prove itself through force or aggression. This is strength that moves like water, adapting to every obstacle while never losing its essential direction. When this sign is present in you, you find that your influence comes not from pushing,
but from presence. Not from demanding, but from simply being authentically yourself. People often misunderstand this quality, seeing gentleness as weakness. But what I have witnessed across decades of reading souls is that gentle power is actually the most sophisticated form of spiritual strength. It requires tremendous inner stability to remain soft in a world that rewards hardness. It demands profound confidence to influence through attraction rather than coercion.
Watch how this manifests in your daily interactions. Do you find yourself achieving more through patient understanding than through forceful argument? Do people naturally turn to you for guidance, drawn by something in your presence that they cannot quite name? This gentle power emerges when your ego has been sufficiently refined that it no longer needs to prove itself. The awakened spirit understands that true power flows from alignment with natural laws, not from opposition to them. Like the moon that moves the vast oceans through gravitational pull rather than violent storms, your influence becomes subtle yet undeniable. You may notice that others feel inexplicably calmer in your presence, that conflicts seem to dissolve naturally when you enter a room, that solutions emerge from what others perceived as impossible situations.
But here is what creates the deepest transformation. This gentle power extends even to your relationship with yourself. You stop using harsh methods to force your own growth. You no longer berate yourself into improvement or whip yourself toward goals. Instead, you learn to guide your own development with the same patient kindness you offer to others. This inner gentleness becomes the foundation from which all external gentleness flows. The fifth sign reveals itself as the sacred boundaries, a profound knowing of when to give and when to protect your energy. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of spiritual development. Many believe that spiritual advancement means becoming endlessly available to others, saying yes to every request, giving until you have nothing left. But what I have observed is that those who reach deeper levels of spiritual maturity develop an almost mystical sensitivity to energy exchange. You begin to sense, sometimes before conscious thought, which interactions will nourish your spirit and which will drain it. This isn't selfishness, it's sacred stewardship of the divine energy that flows through you. When this sign is active within you, you discover that your generosity becomes more powerful precisely because it's more discerning. You give from fullness rather than emptiness, from overflow rather than depletion. People feel the difference. Your presence carries a different quality when you're energetically aligned versus when you're running on empty, trying to please everyone. This sacred boundary setting manifests in subtle ways that others might not even notice. You might find yourself naturally stepping back from conversations that feel gossipy or negative. You may discover that you're less available for drama that doesn't serve anyone's highest good. There's an inner compass that guides you toward interactions that feed the soul and away from those that diminish it. You learn to distinguish between genuine need and emotional manipulation, between authentic requests for help and unconscious energy vampirism. The blessing in this sign is immense. Your relationships become cleaner, more honest, more mutually nourishing. The challenge is that some people will not understand your boundaries. They may accuse you of becoming cold or distant when you're actually becoming more discerningly loving.
This is where your spiritual maturity is tested. Can you maintain your boundaries with kindness? Can you protect your energy while still keeping your heart open to genuine connection? As we pause here for a moment, I feel moved to ask you directly, have you noticed these patterns in your own experience? If these signs are stirring recognition within you, I encourage you to share this knowledge with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we serve as messengers for truths that others are ready to receive, but haven't yet found the language to express. The sixth sign emerges as the truth speaker, an almost physical inability to participate in deception, even the small social lies that most people consider harmless. When this sign is active in your spiritual system, something inside you rebels against dishonesty in ways that can be both liberating and challenging.
You may find that you literally cannot bring yourself to say things you don't mean, to participate in gossip that you know is harmful, or to pretend enthusiasm for things that don't align with your values. This doesn't mean you become harsh or blunt in your truth-telling. Instead, there's a quality of authentic expression that emerges. You learn to speak truth in ways that serve love rather than ego. You discover that there's always a way to be honest that doesn't wound unnecessarily. Sometimes this means choosing silence when words wouldn't help. Sometimes it means finding creative ways to redirect conversations away from harmful territory. And sometimes it means having difficult conversations that others avoid because you literally cannot live with the tension of unspoken truth. People often react strongly to truth speakers. Some are drawn to your authenticity, like flowers turning toward the sun. They feel safe in your presence because they know you won't manipulate or deceive them. Others feel threatened by your refusal to participate in the comfortable illusions that make their lives feel manageable. This can create a kind of social sorting in your relationships. Friendships that were built on shallow foundations may fade away, while deeper connections with those who share your commitment to truth will strengthen. The psychological depth of this sign reveals itself in how it affects your inner world. When you cannot lie to others, you also find it increasingly difficult to lie to yourself. Self-deception becomes almost physically uncomfortable. You develop what I might call an allergy to illusion. This can be challenging when it forces you to face aspects of yourself or your life that you'd rather avoid, but it's ultimately incredibly liberating. You begin to live from a place of such internal alignment that your outer life naturally reorganizes itself to match your authentic values. These three signs, the gentle power, the sacred boundaries, and the truth speaker, work together to create what I call the awakened spirit in movement. They represent a level of spiritual development where you're no longer just receiving spiritual insights, but actively expressing spiritual maturity in the world. You become a force for healing and transformation simply through the quality of your presence and the integrity of your choices. The challenge with these signs is that they can sometimes feel isolating. When you operate from gentle power in a world that often rewards aggression, when you maintain sacred boundaries in a culture that demands constant availability, when you speak truth in environments built on polite deception, you may sometimes feel like you're speaking a different language than those around you. This is why community with others who understand this journey becomes so essential. But here is what I want you to understand deeply.
These signs are not burdens, but gifts. They are indicators that your soul is remembering its original nature, that you're shedding the layers of conditioning that taught you to be smaller, more dishonest, more aggressive than your spirit actually is. Each of these signs represents a return to your authentic spiritual blueprint, a coming home to who you were always meant to be.
Stay with me as we continue, for the next layer of signs reveals something even more remarkable about the territories your consciousness is beginning to explore. Listen closely now, for we approach the threshold where the seen meets the unseen, where those who walk between worlds begin to recognize themselves. You have journeyed with me through 6 signs, and perhaps you have felt that stirring recognition, that whisper of truth echoing in your soul. But now we enter sacred territory, the realm where spirit no longer knocks gently at the door of consciousness, but walks boldly through the corridors of your daily existence. The 7th sign that reveals your advancing spiritual level is what the ancients called the ability to read the sacred script of existence itself. You have become what I name the synchronicity reader. Do you find yourself pausing in the middle of ordinary moments, struck by the elegant precision of life's choreography? A song plays just as you think of someone, and within hours they contact you. A book falls open to exactly the page your soul needs to read. Numbers repeat themselves with such insistence that you cannot dismiss them as mere coincidence. This is not fantasy, my dear ones. This is the awakening of a faculty that has always existed within you, the ability to perceive the divine conversation that surrounds us constantly. In the Bulgarian mountains of my childhood, the old women spoke of this gift with reverence. They knew that when the soul reaches a certain vibrational frequency, it begins to resonate with the cosmic intelligence that orchestrates all things. But here lies both the blessing and the burden of this recognition. Once you begin to see these patterns, you cannot unsee them. The world becomes a living oracle, speaking to you through billboard messages that answer your morning prayers, through the behavior of animals that mirrors your internal struggles, through the sudden appearance of feathers, coins, or stones in your path, just when you need confirmation that you are not walking alone. Yet in our modern world, to speak of such things is to invite skepticism, even ridicule. The synchronicity reader often finds themselves torn between the vivid reality of their experience and the flatland consciousness of those around them. You learn to treasure these moments in the privacy of your heart, sharing them only with those rare souls who understand that the universe is not a random collection of matter, but a living, breathing intelligence that loves us enough to leave us signs. The 8th sign emerges as a deepening sensitivity that extends beyond mere intuition. You have become the energy sensitive, one who can feel the spiritual climate of every room you enter, every person you encounter. Do you find yourself inexplicably uncomfortable in certain places, as if the very walls hold memories of pain or conflict? Do you meet someone for the first time and immediately sense the weight they carry, the battles they fight in private, the light they either nurture or suppress? This sensitivity is not a burden, though it may feel overwhelming at first. It is the emergence of your soul's natural radar, attuning itself to the subtle currents that flow beneath the surface of all interactions. In ancient temples, such individuals were recognized as the Watchers,
the ones who could discern the spiritual condition of communities and guide healing where it was most needed. I have witnessed this gift in action countless times. A woman enters a room and immediately feels the residual anger from an argument that took place hours before. A man shakes hands with a stranger and suddenly experiences the other person's grief as if it were his own. Children display this sensitivity naturally until the world teaches them to ignore these impressions, to dismiss them as imagination. But you who are reading these energetic currents, you are not losing your mind. You are finding your true sight. The veil between dimensions grows thin for those who have purified their inner vision, and what seems like overwhelming sensitivity is actually the gift of spiritual empathy awakening within you. You become a barometer of the unseen, able to navigate the invisible landscape that shapes all visible experience. Yet this gift comes with its own challenges in our disconnected age. You may find yourself avoiding crowds, not because you dislike people, but because the cacophony of unexpressed emotions and spiritual confusion becomes unbearable. Shopping centers, hospitals, even some churches may feel oppressive because you absorb the collective spiritual atmosphere. Learning to shield yourself, to transmute these energies rather than simply absorb them, becomes essential for your well-being. If you recognize yourself in these words, know that you carry within you the potential for the ninth sign, perhaps the most profound of all. You have the capacity to become the natural healer, one whose very presence begins to transform the spiritual atmosphere around them. This is not about techniques or training, though these may enhance the gift. This is about the emanation of peace that flows from a soul that has learned to maintain inner harmony regardless of external chaos. Have you noticed that troubled people seem drawn to you? That conversations with you leave others feeling inexplicably lighter? That animals approach you with unusual trust and plants seem to thrive in your presence? This is not your imagination. This is the signature of a soul that has become a conduit for healing energy. In the sacred traditions of many cultures, such individuals were recognized as the bridge builders between heaven and earth. The Celtic peoples called them the Thin Ones, those whose spiritual membrane was so refined that divine love could flow through them almost without obstruction. In the Eastern traditions, they were seen as bodhisattvas, souls who had advanced spiritually, yet remained embodied to serve others' awakening. But observe carefully how this gift manifests. It is not about what you do, but about who you have become. The natural healer does not announce themselves or perform dramatic displays. Instead, their presence creates a field of peace so palpable that others naturally relax in their company. Their words, spoken from a place of inner stillness, carry a quality that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the soul. I have seen this repeatedly in my long years of serving others. Sometimes the most profound healing occurs not through prophecy or vision, but through the simple presence of someone who has learned to embody spiritual peace. A grandmother whose kitchen becomes a sanctuary for wounded hearts. A teacher whose classroom feels like sacred space. A friend whose listening creates an atmosphere where truth can finally be spoken. Yet, in our achievement-oriented world, the natural healer often struggles with feelings of inadequacy.
They may wonder why they don't have more dramatic gifts, more obvious powers. They fail to recognize that their ability to create sacred space through their very being is one of the rarest and most precious spiritual attainments. They are living sanctuaries, walking temples that remind others of what peace feels like. The challenge for the natural healer in modern times is learning to value this subtle gift in a world that celebrates the spectacular. You may find that your deepest healing work happens in moments that feel ordinary to you. A conversation with a stranger, a gentle touch, a moment of patient listening. You must learn to trust that your spiritual advancement is measured not by what you can produce, but by what you can embody. These 3 signs, the synchronicity reader, the energy sensitive, and the natural healer, represent the bridge between the personal spiritual journey and service to the collective awakening. They mark the soul's movement from seeking spiritual experiences to becoming a spiritual presence in the world. As we prepare to explore the final trinity of signs that reveal the highest levels of spiritual development, take a moment to honor any recognition you have felt. These are not casual gifts or random abilities. They are the sacred inheritance of every soul that chooses to walk the path of conscious evolution, to become not just spiritually aware, but spiritually useful to the great work of healing that our world so desperately needs. Do you feel the stirring of recognition in these words? Share in the comments which of these signs resonates most deeply with your own spiritual journey. Your recognition may be the validation another soul needs to trust their own emerging gifts. And now, dear soul, as we approach the summit of spiritual recognition, I must share with you the 3 signs that mark those who have walked furthest on the path of awakening. These are the signatures of true masters, though they themselves would never claim such a title. They are the ones who have discovered the greatest secret of all, that the highest spiritual achievement is to become so ordinary, so transparent, that divinity flows through them like sunlight through clear water. I have witnessed these beings throughout my years of seeing, and always they surprise those who expect spiritual grandeur. Instead of crowns, they wear humility. Instead of proclamations, they offer presence. They are the living proof that evolution of consciousness leads not to superiority, but to the most profound simplicity. The 10th sign reveals itself as the ego transparent. Watch carefully, for this is perhaps the most misunderstood marker of spiritual development. These souls have moved beyond the need to prove their spiritual worth to anyone, including themselves. They no longer collect spiritual experiences like trophies, no longer measure their progress against others, no longer feel compelled to demonstrate their connection to the divine. I remember a man I encountered decades ago, a simple carpenter who possessed this transparency. People came to him with their deepest troubles, drawn by something they couldn't name. He never spoke of his spiritual practices, never mentioned his insights, never claimed any special abilities. Yet in his presence, healing occurred. His ego had become so transparent that it cast no shadow on the divine light moving through him. This is the paradox that confuses so many seekers. We imagine that spiritual advancement means becoming more impressive,
more powerful, more obviously enlightened. But the truth moves in the opposite direction. The more genuinely advanced a soul becomes, the less they need to appear advanced. Their spiritual identity becomes so secure that it requires no external validation, no performance, no proof. Do you notice how desperately the spiritually immature proclaim their achievements? They speak endlessly of their meditations, their visions, their special knowledge. But those who carry this 10th sign move through the world like water, taking the shape of whatever container they find themselves in, never demanding recognition for their essential nature. This transparency manifests in countless ways. They don't correct others who underestimate them. They don't feel insulted when their wisdom goes unrecognized. They don't need to be seen as spiritual teachers or healers or guides. They simply are, and their being is enough to transform every space they enter. The 11th sign emerges as love without condition, the capacity to embrace all beings without requiring them to change. This is not the sentimental love that seeks to fix or improve others. This is not the conditional love that says, "I will accept you when you become better." This is the love that sees every soul as already perfect in their essential nature, even while they struggle with their human imperfections. I have seen this love in action, and it is breathtaking in its power. These beings look upon the angry person and see the hurt child beneath. They encounter the bitter soul and recognize the disappointed idealist. They meet the cruel heart and understand the frightened guardian within. And in their acceptance, complete, unconditional, unwavering, they create a space where transformation becomes possible. This love does not mean they enable destructive behavior or ignore harmful actions. Rather, they respond to what is needed in each moment from a place of clarity unmarked by personal judgment. They may set firm boundaries, speak difficult truths, or walk away from toxic situations, but they do so without hatred, without the need to punish, without the desire to prove someone wrong. I once witnessed a woman demonstrate this love toward her abusive husband as he lay dying. She cared for him with tenderness, not because she approved of his actions, but because she saw beyond his behavior to the soul that had lost its way. Her love didn't excuse his cruelty, but it offered him a final opportunity to remember his own divine nature. This is the love that heals, not by changing others, but by seeing them truly. Those who carry this sign understand that every being is doing the best they can with their current level of consciousness. They don't waste energy trying to force growth in others because they trust that each soul will awaken in its perfect timing. Their love becomes a lighthouse, steadily shining, available to guide any ship that chooses to navigate toward its light. If you're recognizing this quality stirring within yourself, know that you're approaching the realm where true spiritual service becomes possible. For only when we love without condition can we serve without agenda. The 12th and final sign manifests as divine surrender, perfect trust in the universe's unfolding wisdom. This is not passive resignation or spiritual bypassing. This is the active alignment with cosmic intelligence, the deep knowing that life itself is the greatest teacher, and every experience arrives as an opportunity for growth or service. Those who embody this surrender have learned the ultimate secret. Resistance creates suffering, but alignment creates flow. They no longer fight against what is, because they understand that what is contains everything they need for their continued evolution. This doesn't mean they become passive observers of life. Instead, they become conscious participants in the divine dance, moving with the music of existence rather than against it. I have felt this surrender in my own deepest visions, when the boundaries between my will and divine will dissolved completely. In those moments, I understood that surrender is not about giving up personal power, but about aligning personal power with infinite wisdom. It is the difference between swimming against the current and learning to navigate with the flow of the river. These souls have learned to trust even when they cannot understand. They have discovered that the universe's intelligence exceeds their limited human perspective. They may not always know why certain events unfold, but they trust that everything serves the highest good of all beings, even when that good remains invisible from their current vantage point. This surrender transforms not only their inner experience, but their entire relationship with life. They waste no energy in resentment about the past, because they understand that the past was perfect for bringing them to this moment.
They carry no anxiety about the future, because they trust that the same intelligence that has carried them this far will continue to provide exactly what they need. Watch how these beings move through challenge and change. Where others see crisis, they see invitation. Where others see loss, they see liberation. Where others see endings, they see new beginnings. Their surrender has taught them that life is always working for them, never against them. The profound beauty of these three signs, ego transparency, unconditional love, and divine surrender, is how they create a ripple effect that transforms everything around them. These souls become agents of healing simply through their presence. Their transparency allows others to see their own potential clearly. Their unconditional love creates safety for others to examine their own hearts honestly. Their surrender demonstrates the peace that comes from aligning with rather than fighting against life's flow. And here lies the greatest paradox of spiritual mastery. The more evolved these beings become, the more humble and ordinary they appear. They don't need special titles, don't require recognition, don't seek followers or fame. They are content to be the unknown blessing in someone's day, the quiet presence that offers comfort, the simple soul who reminds others of their own divine nature through example rather than words. Take a moment now to feel into your own heart. Can you sense these qualities emerging within you? Notice I didn't ask if you've mastered them, for mastery is not the goal. The goal is recognition, development, embodiment. These signs are not achievements to attain, but natural expressions of consciousness awakening to its true nature. Share in the comments below, which of these final three signs calls to you most strongly? Where do you feel the invitation to surrender more deeply to love's wisdom? Your honest reflection may be the encouragement another soul needs to trust their own path toward transparent love. Now, as we stand at this threshold of recognition, I sense you may be wondering, how do I truly know where I am on this path?
How do I read these sacred signs in myself without the veils of self-deception or the inflation of spiritual ego? This question comes to me often in the quiet hours, when seekers approach with honest hearts but confused minds. They have read the signs, felt the stirrings, yet they remain uncertain.
Baba Vanga, they whisper. How do I know if what I'm experiencing is real spiritual growth or merely the mind's elaborate performance? Listen closely, dear soul, for what I'm about to share will transform how you witness your own unfolding and how you recognize the authentic spiritual fire burning within others. This sacred recognition is perhaps the most delicate skill on the spiritual path. Too harsh, and we crush the tender shoots of awakening. Too gentle, and we enable spiritual fantasy. The first key lies in understanding what I call the mirror of honest assessment. True spiritual development cannot survive in the atmosphere of self-congratulation. When you examine your own signs, you must become like the jeweler examining a precious stone, appreciative of its beauty, yet uncompromisingly accurate about its flaws. I have seen countless souls who wear their spiritual experiences like badges of honor, collecting mystical moments as trophies. They speak of their visions, their intuitive gifts, their capacity for compassion. Yet something feels hollow in their presentation. The authentic sign of spiritual development is not in what you can proclaim about yourself, but in what others naturally recognize in your presence without you ever mentioning your path. Ask yourself this question with brutal honesty. When you're alone, completely alone, with no audience to perform for, what is the quality of your consciousness? In that private space where no one can witness your spiritual sophistication, are you genuinely more peaceful than you were a year ago? Are you actually more loving toward yourself and others when no one is watching? This is where true spiritual assessment begins. The paradox of authentic spiritual growth is that the more genuine it becomes, the less interested you become in measuring it. It's like asking a mother if she loves her child. The question itself seems absurd because the love is simply the natural state of being. When these 12 signs are genuinely present, they feel less like accomplishments and more like the inevitable expression of who you are becoming. But here lies a crucial danger I must warn you about, the seductive trap of spiritual bypassing. I have witnessed beautiful souls convince themselves they have transcended anger, fear, or human need, when in reality they have simply learned to repress these aspects under spiritual concepts. They speak of forgiveness while harboring resentment, claim detachment while desperately controlling outcomes, proclaim unconditional love while judging others' spiritual progress. True spiritual growth includes everything. It doesn't bypass the human experience, but transforms it from within. If your spiritual development makes you less capable of feeling deeply, less able to engage authentically with life's messiness, then something has gone astray. The genuine signs we've explored don't make you inhuman. They make you more beautifully, compassionately human. When recognizing these signs in others, the golden rule becomes even more sacred. Witness without judgment. Appreciate without comparison. I have learned through decades of reading souls that spiritual comparison is one of the most destructive forces on the path.
The moment you begin measuring someone else's spiritual development against your own, you have fallen into ego's most clever trap. Each soul carries a unique blueprint of awakening. Some may demonstrate profound compassion but struggle with surrender. Others might embody deep wisdom yet wrestle with emotional balance. Some display remarkable intuitive gifts while learning to trust their inner knowing. The signs we've explored are not a checklist for spiritual ranking, but indicators of consciousness exploring different avenues of its own magnificence. I remember observing a simple grandmother who could barely read, but whose presence radiated such pure love that hardened criminals wept in her company. According to conventional spiritual measures, she might seem undeveloped, yet she embodied several of our 12 signs so naturally, so authentically, that scholars of mysticism seemed like children in comparison to her depth. This teaches us that spiritual recognition requires the eyes of the heart, not the analytical mind. You recognize authentic spiritual development not by what someone claims or even what they know, but by how their presence affects your own soul. Do you feel more peaceful around them, more encouraged to be authentic, more connected to your own spiritual longing? These are the true indicators of another's genuine development. Now, let me share practical wisdom for nurturing these signs in your own journey. The most important understanding is this: you cannot force spiritual development any more than you can force a flower to bloom. But you can create the conditions where natural unfolding becomes inevitable. Create daily space for silence. Not meditation as performance, but genuine listening to the depths of your own being. Notice what arises without trying to fix, improve, or spiritually optimize it. This honest witnessing is the soil where authentic transformation takes root. Practice what I call spiritual honesty, admitting to yourself when you're spiritually performing versus genuinely growing. Notice when you're using spiritual concepts to avoid feeling difficult emotions or facing uncomfortable truths about yourself. This kind of honesty is uncomfortable, but essential. Cultivate ordinary compassion before seeking extraordinary spiritual experiences. Can you be genuinely kind to the difficult people in your daily life? Can you forgive small slights before claiming you've transcended all resentment? The spiritual path is built on these seemingly mundane foundations. If you've been with me this far in our journey together, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, not because I need your subscription, but because content like this, which honors the complexity and authenticity of spiritual growth, is becoming increasingly rare. Here, we speak truths that the spiritual marketplace often avoids. Remember, dear soul, that with recognition of these spiritual signs comes profound responsibility. The more clearly you can see authentic spiritual development in yourself and others, the greater your obligation to use this recognition wisely. You become a guardian of others' spiritual dignity, a protector of their authentic unfolding. This responsibility means celebrating genuine growth wherever you find it, regardless of its form or tradition. It means offering encouragement to struggling souls without trying to fix or advise them. It means being honest about your own limitations while remaining open to continued growth. Most importantly, It means understanding that spiritual recognition is itself a spiritual practice, one that can either serve love or feed ego, depending on how consciously you wield it.
The ultimate sign of spiritual maturity may be this: the less you need to identify yourself as spiritual, and the more you simply live from the truth these signs represent. When authenticity, compassion, wisdom, and love become as natural as breathing, you have moved beyond seeking spiritual signs into embodying spiritual reality. As we prepare for our final exploration together, take a moment to reflect honestly. How do you currently assess your own spiritual development? Have you been measuring yourself against others, or listening deeply to your own authentic unfolding? Share your insights in the comments. Your honesty might give another soul permission to drop their spiritual mask and embrace their genuine path. When authenticity, compassion, wisdom, and love become as natural as breathing, you have moved beyond seeking spiritual signs into embodying spiritual reality. But here, at this threshold, I must share with you the most profound truth I have witnessed in all my years of seeing beyond the veil. The very seeking of spiritual levels is itself a beautiful illusion that serves its purpose until it no longer does. Allow me to speak to you now as one soul to another, beyond the measurements and assessments we have explored together. For in this final moment of our journey, you deserve to know what lies beyond all the signs, beyond all the levels, beyond all the spiritual hierarchies that the human mind creates to make sense of the infinite mystery of consciousness itself. I have watched countless souls torture themselves with spiritual comparison. They measure their meditation against the mystic, their compassion against the saint, their wisdom against the sage. They create ladders where none exist, competitions where only cooperation flows, achievements where only becoming unfolds. Do you recognize this pattern in yourself? This beautiful, necessary, and ultimately limiting way of understanding your spiritual journey? The earth does not compare its mountains to its valleys. The ocean does not judge its storms against its calm. The forest does not measure the oak against the wildflower. Each expression of life serves the whole with perfect precision. Yet we, in our spiritual seeking, create hierarchies that separate us from the very unity we long to experience. Here is what I have seen in the realm beyond physical sight. Every soul enters this lifetime with a specific spiritual signature, a unique frequency of consciousness that serves the greater symphony of existence. Some souls incarnate to explore the depths of suffering and transformation. Others come to embody joy and celebration. Some are here to question everything, while others arrive to trust completely. There is no higher or lower in this cosmic design, only different instruments playing their essential parts. The 12 signs we have explored together are not achievements to unlock or levels to attain. They are natural expressions that flower when a soul aligns with its authentic spiritual purpose. For some, deep intuitive knowing emerges effortlessly, like water finding its course. For others,
profound compassion blooms naturally from their life experiences. Some souls carry ancient wisdom from the moment they speak, while others develop it slowly through careful observation and reflection. When I observe a person's spiritual unfolding, I do not see them climbing a ladder towards some distant enlightenment. I see them remembering who they have always been beneath the layers of conditioning, fear, and forgetting. The signs of spiritual development are simply the soul recognizing itself, like a river discovering it was always connected to the ocean. This is why spiritual pride is perhaps the greatest obstacle on any authentic path. When we begin to identify with our spiritual experiences, when we collect our insights like trophies, when we use our development to separate ourselves from others, we have forgotten the fundamental truth. All spiritual growth serves love, not ego. The moment you find yourself feeling superior because of your spiritual signs, you have stepped out of genuine development and into spiritual performance. True spiritual maturity recognizes itself in the grandmother who never speaks of consciousness, but lives it in every act of service. It sees itself in the child who forgives instantly without any knowledge of spiritual teachings. It honors itself in the broken person who continues to choose hope despite overwhelming evidence for despair. Spirituality is not about knowing the right words or displaying the right signs. It is about becoming increasingly transparent to love. I want to address those of you who may have recognized few of these signs in yourself and feel somehow lacking or behind. Your sensitivity to this content, your willingness to explore these concepts, your longing for authentic spiritual connection, these are already profound signs of your spiritual awakening. The very desire to grow, to serve, to understand your place in the greater mystery of existence is itself a sacred flowering. Perhaps your spirituality expresses differently than the patterns we have discussed. Perhaps you are here to embody doubt as a sacred practice, or to explore the spiritual dimensions of creativity, or to demonstrate how love can flourish in the most ordinary circumstances. Trust your unique unfolding. The universe needs your specific expression of consciousness, not another copy of someone else's spiritual journey. And for those who recognized many signs within yourself, remember that recognition is only the beginning. The true gift of spiritual development is not in the having, but in the giving. How do these signs serve others? How does your intuition guide you toward compassion? How does your inner peace contribute to healing in your community? How does your connection to something greater inspire others to discover their own sacred nature? The integration of these 12 signs happens naturally when we stop trying to achieve them and start allowing them to emerge. Like flowers that bloom not through force, but through proper conditions of sunlight, water, and soil, spiritual signs manifest when we create the inner conditions of honesty, surrender, and service. As our exploration together comes to a close, I offer you this final truth. Your spiritual level is perfect, exactly as it is right now. Not because there is nothing to grow into, but because this moment is precisely where your consciousness needs to be for your unique purpose to unfold. You are not behind. You are not lacking. You are not insufficient. You are a sacred being in the process of remembering your divinity, and that process is holy at every stage. The real question is not, what is my spiritual level? But rather, how can I honor the spiritual gifts I have been given? Some of you came here to plant seeds you may never see bloom. Others arrived to tend gardens started by those who came before. Some are here to harvest the wisdom of many lifetimes, while others are beginning the first sacred steps of their eternal journey. If these insights have touched something true within you, I invite you to share this exploration with someone who might also benefit from looking beyond spiritual comparison toward spiritual authenticity. Your willingness to share these understandings is itself a spiritual sign, the recognition that truth shared multiplies rather than diminishes. In the comments below, I would love to hear not about which signs you recognize in yourself, but about how you plan to honor whatever stage of spiritual development you find yourself in right now. How will you serve from where you are, rather than waiting until you become who you think you should be? Your honest sharing creates permission for others to embrace their own authentic spiritual expression. May you remember that you are both the seeker and the sought, both the question and the answer, both the path and the destination. May you trust the perfect timing of your spiritual unfolding and recognize the sacred in the ordinary moments of your daily existence. And may you know with complete certainty that your presence in this world is a gift that only you can give at exactly the spiritual level you embody right now. The mystery continues, dear soul. The journey deepens. The love expands. And you are exactly where you belong, in the infinite spiral of awakening consciousness.